Hello, everybody. Great to see all of you on a Tuesday night. This has become a regular date right here on Tuesday night, right? For the watch party of the college football playoff unveiling, and this being the second most important unveiling of the college football playoff rankings. It's all going to matter next Sunday. This is our last Tuesday together. Such a shame. But of course, on a Sunday, we will find out, I believe, at noon Eastern time, who made the final college football playoff Final Four and who's going to play in the Invitational. So let's kick back and check it out here as we will go from 25 all the way up to number 1. Then we will talk about it and take all of your calls here on the Voice of College Football. Let's get to all of your comments. It's been quite the busy day here at the Voice of College Football, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Lincoln Riley, of course, on to USC, and Oklahoma looking for a new head coach. I believe it's going to be Brent Venables, the Clemson defensive coordinator. And so we did our Oklahoma Live show for a third consecutive day, and we'll be back tomorrow on the Oklahoma channel at 12:30 Central time. So at 10 a.m., we were at it bright and early on the Oklahoma channel. And then, of course, we had our weekly Miami Live with the Wholesome One. And here we go with the top 25. Texas A&M slips to 25. They dropped 10 spots. Louisiana's there, minus Billy Napier, who I believe is going to coach in the bowl or in the Sun Belt Championship game against App State. Kentucky at 23. They had a nice win. It's nice to see the Wildcats a little bit of respect for maybe the one team in the SEC that is underrated typically. Kentucky, they're the only one. At 23, Arkansas at 22, Houston at 21. I should probably pull up my rankings and see how it compares from here. So we've got Cincinnati lining up against the number 21 team in the country, according to the playoff committee. And that could factor into all of this if Oklahoma State beats Baylor, and there's got to be a comparison made between OK State and Cincy. Clemson at 20, yes, they are probably one of the 10, 12, 15 best teams in the country. San Diego State looking to win the Mountain West. They've been by far the best team out there this season. NC State at 18. They're honoring the head-to-head against Clemson. I like to see that, although I broke my own rule this week. Utah at 17. Of course, they annihilated Oregon a couple weeks ago, and they play in the Big 12 in the Pac-12 championship game. Pitt at 15. Oklahoma drops to 14. Iowa at 13. Should we discuss Iowa's path to the college football playoff? It exists. BYU at 12. Michigan State 11. And now on to the top 10 here soon. There's Quantum Bear Trap. Go Hawks. You're at number 13 with a narrow path to the playoff. Can you believe it? Iowa, the loser to Purdue by 3 scores. Looked awful against Wisconsin, stumbled past Northwestern, that needed Minnesota to beat Wisconsin the final weekend of the season in an upset. Iowa could make the playoff. One team that I don't believe has a path right now would be Adon Bay, Florida State. All right, here we go at number 10, Oregon. And we got our Pac-12 championship game coming up on Friday, of course. Drop 75 is letting us know that the Dave Doran era is upon us. Let's hope not. No, Drop 75, we love you. Thank you for being here. We always appreciate you being here and love that there are other fan bases involved. So NC State Didn't quite make it to the ACC championship game, but they'll have a pretty good bowl game lined up. Baylor at 9, playing, of course, in the Big 12 championship game, not Oklahoma. So the Bears get it done. They barely beat Texas Tech. They got pushed to the limit, but Baylor, good football team. They're not the 9th best football team in America, but their resume says that they should be there. So I'm good with that. I've got Baylor a little lower, I believe. I'll have to check on my rankings here. There's Ole Miss at 8. So I've got Baylor at 11. I've got Ole Miss at 8 as well. I've got Oregon at 13, Oklahoma 12, Baylor 11, Iowa 10, Michigan State 9, Ole Miss 8. This time last week, Ohio State was in the discussion. No more. Regardless of how high they are, it just doesn't matter. They're gone. Oklahoma State or Oklahoma in the discussion this time last week, talking about their path. Gone, done. Dropped all the way to what, 14? At number 7, we've got the Buckeyes. We're going to talk all those scenarios that Joey Galloway is talking about right now. Oh, man. We got some interesting ones. We've got 2 teams in the SEC, 2 teams in the Big 10, 1 team in the Big 12. I'm not going to count Baylor as being involved, and probably just Oregon in the Pac-12 that's got a chance. But if Oregon does, I guess Baylor does too. They're 1 spot ahead of them. That's 7. Notre Dame, Cincinnati. 9 teams could make the playoff. 9. You know what Ohio State needed after losing to Michigan? They needed Wisconsin to go to the Big Ten championship game and win and wipe out the Big Ten. Georgia won. Guys, get that? Everybody mark that down so you don't forget. Georgia's won this week. Michigan jumps Alabama. Okay, they did the right thing. That is the right thing to do. Alabama 3. Yeah. They really struggled last week, and they really struggled the week before against Arkansas. But Arkansas and Auburn are, especially Arkansas, is a good team. If they would have struggled like Oregon struggled against Stanford and actually lost, and Oregon struggled against a lot of rough teams. Yes, it depends who you're struggling against. Alabama's struggling against LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, Tennessee, some pretty good teams. Cincinnati struggling against Navy and Tulsa. Okay, there it is. And then we'll have what Notre Dame? No, Oklahoma State jumps up ahead of Notre Dame. Oklahoma State ahead of Notre Dame. Okay, then. So Notre Dame needs Cincinnati to lose, and they need Alabama to lose badly, or if Michigan loses, Notre Dame still has a path. Although, what happens in deciding between Cincinnati and Notre Dame if Cincinnati loses? Don't they still get a tiebreaker over Notre Dame? So, Mike, you make the comment that Iowa should be ranked ahead of Michigan State. Just because I was going to a conference championship game, Michigan State's played a much more difficult schedule. Iowa's got nothing close to Michigan State's resume when it comes to wins or losses. Michigan State's had to play, they both played Penn State. Michigan State's played Michigan and Ohio State. Iowa's got nothing close to that. So forget about who's going to what championship games. You could have the four best teams in the Big Ten. I'm talking theoretically, not about this particular situation. The four best teams in any conference could be in the same division. And so just because the fifth best team in the conference goes to the conference championship game, we've seen that multiple years in the ACC, doesn't mean that they should be ranked ahead of somebody else in the other division. Oh, come on, Wes. Iowa does have a path. And yes, Don, thank you for reminding everyone to hit that like button. It helps tremendously. Charles, appreciate you being here and everybody else here at the Voice of College Football. Let's hear from the chair, and then I will strike up the phone lines. Let's do that. Actually, let me get that set up right here during the old commercial break.
Thank you for calling College Studios. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You have not started a show session in College Studio and cannot yet receive calls on Mark Rogers' Voice of College Football. Please visit the College Studio website and begin your session. Music will play until your session begins, or you may call back when you are ready. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the College Studio web interface.
Okay. Our phone lines are set up, folks. 860-499-3332. We've got quite the professional setup here. If you haven't been able to figure that out, it is tremendous. The most deserving or the best? Maybe that should be the question of the night. Should we select the most deserving teams or the best teams? And that being said, who do you think are the four best teams versus who are the four most deserving at this point, or who will be the four most deserving after we see these outcomes on Friday and Saturday? Look at this. We've got calls lined up already, folks. Let's get right to it here at the Voice of College Football. Do we need to listen to the chair at this point? We know what he's going to say, right? Welcome in. Who's first up here? course it is. How you doing?
Good, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. Hang on just a second because listening to the chair will also allow me to get this hooked up correctly because this happens from time to time when we hook up the old phone system that it disconnects from the server here, which it apparently has done. All right, we are now connected. All right, the real MVP, let me have it.
Well, my first question to you is, do you think the playoff committee changed their ranking or their perception of Notre Dame and Oklahoma because of their coaches being changing schools?
Ooh, I think they need to take that into consideration. Really, they shouldn't. Let me put it this way. So I don't think that those teams should be penalized. We're really penalizing the players for a decision that their coaches made. On the other hand, if the committee is making judgments on previous games based on injuries, it's almost similar to try to project how good will this team be without Brian Kelly or without Lincoln Riley. So I don't like it because I don't think it's fair to the players. But if we're going to fairly evaluate the teams, it has to be taken into consideration.
And what do you think about players that have transferred from either Oklahoma or Notre Dame because of the move?
What do I think of them in general? Or
No,
as it
what do you
pertains
think?
to the playoffs?
Do you think that impacts the rankings?
Well, do we know about anybody who's transferred from either team? We know that there are players that have decommitted, future players.
Well, I know Spencer Rattler transferred, and I'm pretty sure Oklahoma, one of their running backs, also transferred out.
Yeah, so
for
Spencer
Oklahoma.
Rattler, yeah, that is a key loss. Now, we do know also, though, that Oklahoma State's really not a factor in the playoff race at this point. And I don't know, maybe he would not have made that decision yet if they would have won to play in the Big 12 championship game.
Okay, it was just an interesting thought experiment I thought of this year, which is I think it needs to go to the consideration of we need to space out the college football season a little bit more in terms of moving the early signing day further in advance if we're going to have one. Because I think that's why all these coaches are getting fired and stuff.
Wait,
It's not a good look having all this.
when do you want the early signing period?
I honestly liked having. I just liked having it in February. I don't understand why they had the early signing period because they didn't used to have it, but it's creating a lot of chaos, which is fun, I'll admit. But I don't want it to hurt the playoffs.
I'm not understanding your point about the early signing period having anything to do with affecting the season or the coaching changes.
Well, my theory on why coaches are getting fired earlier in the season and moving is because of the early signing period. If you're an early signing recruit and you don't know you wanted to go to Oklahoma, well, now you're kind of screwed out of Oklahoma. You could go to USC instead, is what I'm saying.
So coaches are still being fired, excluding, let's see, TCU, Gary Patterson, Texas Tech, Matt Wells, and USC with Clay Helton. So those three got fired early in the season. Jimmy Lake at Washington, so there's four. But in terms of
Washington State,
well, that was a COVID situation. In regards to coaches being let go, we're seeing the same situation that we see every year, that after the season concludes, that next day, coaches just drop like flies.
Okay.
The early signing period, the real MVP, was done to benefit the players. That's what the student athletes wanted. They don't want to be harassed until February. They want the opportunity to sign early. And they still have the opportunity to wait until February if they'd like. And even beyond February, JT Tuimoloau, the Ohio State defensive end, the number one player in the country in last year's class, he waited until June.
Okay. It's fair enough. That's fair. I didn't think about it like that. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is, what are your thoughts about Louisiana Lafayette being ranked? I don't think they should be ranked.
Well, it sounds like a conversation we have on a fairly regular basis that if we were truly ranking what we believe to be the 25 best teams in the country, we would rarely have a group of 5 team there. Cincinnati's on a different level. Boise State in the past has been, UCF, Houston, other teams have been at a different level in the past and have clearly been one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country. But we basically determined that if you're a group of 5 team and you put together this amazing record, that we're at some point going to reward you. We did this with Texas San Antonio this year. They did nothing. At whatever point they went from being unranked to ranked, it was like maybe 7-0 to 8-0. They beat some other lousy team that was one of the 10 or 15 worst teams in the country by a certain amount of points. That was not impressive, but they suddenly got ranked. I think we just feel obligated that those teams, if you have this outstanding record, you need to be ranked. But as we've stated here, Louisiana played Texas, and I know that's just one game, but we can go through all sorts of different results and metrics to prove this out, that Louisiana, they didn't stay within 20 points of Texas. Texas is a 4-5-7 football team in the Big 12. So Louisiana is not one of the 20 or 25 best teams in the country, but they're being rewarded for going 11-1.
Okay, and I'm a little bit surprised that Purdue isn't ranked. I mean, they beat they have 4 losses. They lost to really good teams, and they beat Michigan State, Ohio State. Even though they've got 4 losses, and maybe the committee's trying to avoid a 4-loss team in general, I think they should get some love.
They didn't beat Ohio State.
No, they lost to them. They beat Iowa and Michigan State.
Yes. Okay. I've got Purdue 18.
That's a very stark contrast.
It is.
From the committee.
There is a stark contrast routinely between the committee and myself.
And were you surprised that Baylor moved down a spot for Ole Miss?
Do
you think that could...
Did they explain that? Was Baylor ranked ahead of Ole Miss last week?
Yes.
Well, I think the chair was being asked about that. I didn't really hear. I just heard him justifying that it's really loud in Starkville. Now this is ridiculous. That he said something about the cowbells and how loud it is at Starkville. That's just a tremendous environment to overcome. Although I'm sure Mississippi State's record at home down through the years is less than awe-inspiring. So anyway, his explanation from what I heard was pathetic. But Ole Miss beat a good Mississippi State team, one that I believe is one of the 25 best teams in the country, something in that range, 25 or 30. And they beat them, trying to think, they beat them pretty handily. Can't remember exact. It wasn't super close or a blowout. They beat them 31-21. And Baylor struggled against Texas Tech. So we don't know how close those teams were the week before. So I have no issue with that. Shoot, I've got Ole Miss at 8 and I've got Baylor at 11.
It's another somewhat stark. It's not as stark as Purdue, but it is a little bit of a contrast. And one of the first question you asked is whether the 4 best team you go by deserve or who you think is the best. I mean, going by who you think is the best, would Ohio State still be in? I know they just lost to Michigan,
Yes.
but that's hard. I mean, that's why I have to go with the deserve, because I have to go with the results on the field. I can't
Yep.
tell Michigan after 10 years, oh, sorry, you're not going to be in it because we still think Ohio State's better, even though I have no indication that if they play tomorrow, that the result would be any different.
So I understand how you're thinking of it. I'm thinking of it slightly different. I don't know who I was talking to who was calling maybe after the games this past Saturday, and I kind of came to the conclusion, hey, if these people are really selecting, see, they do a little bit of both. They kind of waver back and forth. They go the most deserving route, but if they want to choose the best, who they think is the best, let's understand that nobody knows who the best are. We think we know who the best are. So who they think are the best versus who truly are the best, that's left up to God. That would be the only level of individual that can tell us for sure who's the best. So it's who do you think are the best versus the most deserving, and they do a little bit of both. They kind of slice it down the middle somewhere. The 4 best teams in the country might be Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State.
Maybe. Yeah, that's excluding a lot of conferences, but yeah, I got to agree with that list. But how chaotic, I just was thinking about it, how chaotic of a year is this? Where we know for sure Ohio State's not going to make it, Oklahoma's not going to make it, and Clemson's not going to make it, and Alabama's on the ropes.
Yeah.
Like, when they were talking about this playoff committee, they were saying, well, one of the Big 5 conferences was letting go. We could have a scenario where either it's only SEC, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, or it's SEC, Big 10, and then Notre Dame, Cincinnati. Only 2 or 1 conference can make it this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chaotic.
Could you imagine if we had Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and we had 4 of the 5 conferences left out?
That's what I was saying. I mean,
Okay.
It's very possible if Alabama wins. So, because you're definitely not leaving Georgia out of the playoffs.
No.
And if Alabama wins, they're in for sure. Cincinnati, I mean, is Cincinnati in the win and they're in category, barring 30 or 40 things from happening, like a bunch of outside stuff?
I think that Oklahoma State is the only team that has a possibility of knocking Cincinnati out. And I would think that, Cincinnati, fortunate for them, they're playing a really good team. If they were going to play like a 8-3, or I guess it would be 9-3 team in their conference, but Houston being 11-1, I think they'll get a lot of credit for that win. Now, if Oklahoma State blows the doors off Baylor, they're only 1 spot behind, and we never know how close these spots are. That's one thing we don't know. There are situations in which the committee's thinking 5 is way ahead of 6. That's just the next spot, but they are decidedly behind them. And there are other situations where I'm sure they truly believe 4, 5, 6, and 7 are razor close. So that's the one thing we don't know.
Right. Well, Mark, let me ask you this. If I wanted to make picks for this week's game, do you know where would I go to?
The best place to go to Real MVP would be go to Patreon. You can either go to Patreon and search Mark Rogers TV, or you can go down in the description section of any of the videos and click on the link, go to Patreon, and you get my picks as well as 20 media members. Absolutely.
20 media. That's crazy, Mark. And how much is it?
$5 a month.
That sounds like a lot. Only $5 a month.
A month.
Wow. That's a great deal.
I know people that spend like $500 to $1,000 a football season on betting advice.
And I mean, you've got a pretty good record, Mark. What is your record?
We're around 58 or 59% against the spread, and we're around 80% against the money line.
That's pretty good. 80% against the money line. That's really good, especially for a year like this with a bunch of upsets and stuff happening left and right.
And I just don't pick and choose the games. You know, some of these people, they give you like 3 picks a week. I pick them all. Just pick all the games, all the top 25, and even some more. Just throw them all on there.
I assume you're going to do all the conference championships.
Yes,
including the ones nobody really cares about.
Yeah, we're going to toss those in too. Yes, I'm going to become an expert on Conference USA this weekend. Well, it was good talking to you. Thank you for leading us off, as usual.
No problem.
Next up here at the Voice of College Football, what you got?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Mark. Hey, this is Gary.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah, first of all, I love the platform. So much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Stuff.
It is.
Especially the crossovers with Steve. Yeah, good stuff. Right. First, with everyone saying it's chaotic, I think it's a little nonsense. Because objectively looking at it, everyone thinks the 4 best teams are Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Alabama. I mean, historically speaking, is that so chaotic?
Well, I just threw that out as.
No, I know, but everyone keeps saying it. I just like, really, not really that chaotic.
Well, what's going to end up happening? I'm not going to say it's chaotic, but those teams aren't going to make it. Ohio State's not making it.
No, I understand that, but don't you think that maybe one year it would be cool if they just did say, okay, well, if you want the 4 best teams, we think these are the 4 best teams. Pretty much no one's going to argue it. I mean, some people will argue it, but it's just because of their own biases. Everyone looks at their talent.
Well,
and you have to agree those are the 4 most talented teams.
Yeah, if we could play kind of like dual universes at the same time, that would be phenomenal, because we could say, okay, let's get the 4 deserving teams and let's see how that would come out, and then we'll get the 4 best. But then who determines the 4 best? Well, obviously this committee, they have that power.
Right.
There have been a few times during this playoff history that I guarantee we did not have the 4 best teams. And I said that at the time, and in hindsight, that was proven out as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's if they go to a 12 team, you're going to get the 4 best teams more than likely.
Oh, yes.
Still, and I like that argument that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt that. And that's the thing about going to an 8, a 12, or a 16, is that even if the decision process is still in this committee's hands, much like the selection committee for the NCAA basketball tournament, they then can't screw it up. Like if they selected the 16, let's say we had a 16-team playoff, and we went strictly by the college football playoff rankings, could there be an argument for number 18 being in the top 60? Of course, but there's no question that the top at minimum 13 or 14, the top 13 or 14 out of 16 are going to be there. And if not, then they really don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So they really
that's
can't
where
screw
I think
it up.
Right. Yep. And then, but that's the argument is, so it gives more people an opportunity, and it kind of really does. It's going to benefit the bigger teams, because the ones who have a stumbling, like Ohio State when they stumbled against Oregon, they're going to get in, and now they're going to be in the Final Four. You know what I mean? So it's actually going to give those other teams, yeah, sure, they'll get a chance, but it's going to be no less than being in a normal bowl game. And I've been for expansion throughout the whole time, but when I heard that argument, I'm like, yeah, that's actually probably true. It's going to benefit the Ohio States who are not getting in this year, because they're going to roll through their first 2 rounds probably until they get to Michigan again.
I think it plays out. I think I did the metrics on this, that if there was a 12-team playoff. Yeah. Except for 2011 when Luke Fickell was the interim coach. Ohio State would have made a 12-team playoff every year since 2005. 17 years in a row, they would be in the playoff.
Right. Yep. And they're probably in the Final Four every year, correct? I mean, if they're getting in, I'm sure they're not going to lose the majority of those years in the first two rounds of the first round.
True.
So they're probably in the Final Four anyways. That's what I do kind of understand the people when they say, let's just keep it at 4 and let the other bowl games play out, because it's probably going to work out that way anyways. It's just going to give other teams to say they made the playoffs.
Yep.
I don't know. I think maybe they ought to just leave it the way it is. I go back and forth on it. And I'm a Michigan fan, obviously, so it would have benefited us in 2016. But, I mean, if you're just going to get rolled in that first round, what's the point?
And
might as well keep it where it is. You're at 18, yeah. I don't think that team was as good. That's what I would say, if you don't mind me saying this real quick. I know it's not about the poll, but or the committee, but that I am a little aggravated. Everybody keeps throwing shade at Michigan, acting like this is a one-off game or whatnot. If you go up and down the talent of that team, that is one of the 2 or 3 most talented teams in America, and I don't think anyone could really argue it. NFL talent, up and down it all throughout.
Top 2 or 3.
And I think they're more talented than Ohio State this year. I really believe that. And I live in Ohio, so I watch a lot of Ohio State, a lot. And I really do believe that they were a more talented team this year. That's why I think they're probably the second most talented behind Georgia.
So where I will agree with you is we watched the game Saturday and Michigan was much better. So that would concur with your thought. If you're talking about recruiting rankings, then it's not really debatable that Ohio State's a more talented team than Michigan.
Recruiting rankings, right? But NFL talent, if you go up and down the 22, including the special teams, but the 22, oh yeah, absolutely. You don't?
You think Michigan?
Do you think your tight end matches up?
You think?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You think this Michigan team, the roster? Okay, call me in 4 years.
Absolutely.
Call me in 4 years. And we'll look at the 2021 Ohio State roster and the Michigan roster of 2021, and we'll count the NFL players.
Of the start, not team roster, of the starting 22. Absolutely.
Well, we changed the argument from the roster to the
No. I said the 22. I said the 22 on the field. I said not counting special teams originally. I said the 22 on the field. The 22 on the field. The team that played, this is absolutely, they are, I don't really think there's too much of an argument there. Our offensive line was, all 5 guys are going to be in both offensive lines are going to be in the NFL.
Okay. Yeah.
Both defensive lines are going to be in the NFL, but there's 2 superstars on Michigan's defensive line.
Okay. But Ohio State's defensive line is going to have multiple, NFL players.
Well, so is Michigan's.
Yep.
I'd say all 4 of the starters are going to be. And then you would go to the linebackers, and we're going to have a linebacker in the NFL, maybe 2. I don't know if Josh Ross will end up. But the freshman definitely will. He's going to be a superstar. Okay. And then in the back end, you have a corner. We have 2 corners that'll play in the NFL and a safety that's a first rounder. So, you know what I mean? Like, I guess we shouldn't go position by position. I'm just saying that I think the 22 on the field are just as talented, if not more talented, than Ohio State. That's why they won.
Yeah.
So you think it's close at least?
I think it's close. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why you keep seeing all these nationally talking heads, and they're like, acting like it was a one-off, or these are people, I don't know. It's just aggravating.
Well,
you look at it like you're obviously not watching.
You won the game, so take pride in that, and you have the last laugh because you decisively won the game. but maybe they're talking about the roster.
Yeah, that's true. Not just the 22. Yep. What do you think if they get into the playoff? Do you think they're pretty good shape to get into the championship game, huh?
Well, let's see if the season ended right now. Michigan's playing Alabama. I think that would be a heck of a game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Hopefully they get Cincinnati, and then it'd be crazy going from Harbaugh getting fired to.
Yeah.
He has to be coach of the year now, don't you think? Him or Mel Tucker? I mean, who?
Yeah, if we were going to vote on it right this second, I would vote. Let me think. Yeah, you have to vote for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, crazy. All right. Well, I'll let you go. I don't want to take up too much time. Fun talking to you. Once again, I love it.
Well, thank you.
First responder, so I'm sitting at work, bored. It's fun to watch this stuff.
Cool.
Occupy your time. So
yeah, call me back anytime. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Will do. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, the Michigan-Ohio State comparison is an interesting one for sure, but he makes a good point in going position by position. Just the guys that started and played most of the game, Michigan stacks up rather well. All right. Next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's DeAndre.
Hey, DeAndre. You back on the road?
Yeah, I'm back on the road.
How's it going?
We're going to take a week. It's going good. So did you like my Johnny Heisman comment?
That was well done. That was well played. Very nice.
Yeah, man. You know, I didn't get a chance to see I'm at work. The reveal of the top 25. But the gentleman that you were just speaking to,
yeah,
he was talking about talent, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to make a quick comparison. I think sometimes we get better teams and talent mixed up. Like I'll give you an example. The USC teams that had Jordan, Perkins, Doherty, and a couple other NBA players on it.
Sure.
They might have been a more talented team, but they also lost to Indiana, who was a better play team with Steve Alford. Sometimes I think we get talented and who plays better as a team. Like, for example, I think Clemson has more talent than Wisconsin across the board. However, Wisconsin's system might be better at the team type ball. So I think that's what I think people get mixed up sometimes. Because I'm like you. I think Ohio State by far. I mean, if you're gonna look at who's gonna get drafted and if they're healthy, Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia got the four most talented teams. Georgia, Clemson probably had the most talent on it by recruiting rankings on it than anybody else that played this year. I think, I don't know, I can't remember everybody's schedule. I mean, you go back and look at Oregon. I don't think Oregon was as talented as Ohio State was. I think that the way they played their team ball made them a better fit against Ohio State that day. I mean, I don't think Stanford would beat Ohio State. I don't think they have a chance against Ohio State if they would have played right now. And Stanford beat Oregon. I just think sometimes we get talented who's playing better as a team at that time mixed up sometimes. I mean, we go look at UNLV and Duke basketball one year. I just think that we get that confused. But I'm going to let you go, but I do got one last question for you or comment. Brian Kelly, was you majorly shocked by him leaving?
Yes. And not
Yeah.
just that he's leaving, but where he's going.
But like I try to tell people, my friend is Marty Jarman, the athletic director at UCLA. And I would tell people, people say, well, why don't UCLA have a better football team? Because their academics are off the chain. Same thing with Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame is a great. I not say LSU's not, but as far as letting certain people into your school, LSU gives you a little bit more leeway than Alabama. I mean, than Notre Dame does. So I think it's a better choice. People were like, I listened to some of the show, and I was like, Notre Dame is a better job. I mean, LSU is a better job. This is under 1980. Don't get me wrong. I know Notre Dame's been played for a national championship and been in the college football playoffs, but when they got in there, they pretty much got blasted by everybody that played. So they really wasn't on the same level as those teams. And don't get me wrong. I know Notre Dame has a lot of talent, but it's not as they don't have as much talent as teams that beat them. Clemson, Alabama, both times. So I really just don't think that. I just really don't think that. I think it's a better job. Now, it was in the 1980s or 70s. Notre Dame would be a better job in the late 1980s than LSU would be. But currently, I just think LSU is a better job. So, but I'm going to let you go, and I will catch you this weekend. And hey, I'm still going with that money line with Alabama.
All right. Go to it.
All right.
Hope it comes through for you. All right, DeAndre, have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
You have arrived here at the Voice of College Football, and here's the deal. Got some plastic in my mouth. That at some point along the line, a number of people called me the Voice of College Football. So I said, hey, actually, it was one of my friends who said, you got to jump on that. So hence the Voice of College Football. But whether you think I'm the Voice of College Football, think of it this way as well. You have a voice, and we do our best to give you that voice here. We read off as many comments and questions as any show you will see anywhere. Obviously, we open up the phone lines many times per week. We've got channels all over the place, 25 channels. And so we give you an opportunity all over the place to let your voice be heard. So you've got a voice, I've got a voice, and we've got tons of media contributors who come on here from 247 Sports and Bleacher Report and Rivals and all these other outlets, and they've got a voice on college football. So together, we are the Voice of College Football. All right. Do you own a business? I can say as of a few years ago, and more specifically, once I left my regular job, what some would call a 9-to-5 job, but it was more like a 7 at night to 5 in the morning job, that the business is right here at the Voice of College Football. So if you own a small business or you want to own a small business, one of the best decisions I've ever made, then head on over to Get Business Credit or Get Business Credit right here on YouTube. Josh Van Horn is doing an outstanding job of providing instruction, information, teaching tools for you to access business lines of credit. So if you feel as though because of your own personal credit that's not good enough, that is not taken into consideration. You don't need to deal with your own personal credit, no social security card or number needed. And Josh will let you know how you can establish business lines of credit, thousands of them. So if you own a business, you want to own a business, it's your desire to get into a small business, then certainly check out Josh's YouTube channel there at Get Business Credit. There must be a reason it's exploding. He just started this YouTube channel a few months ago, and it's blown right past mine. So people tell me all the time, Mark, you should have 100,000 subscribers. And I say, yeah, we should have over 100,000 subscribers. We're at around 31, and we are certainly thankful for that. But Josh just went right by it. Get Business Credit. Check it out right here on YouTube. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is Emmanuel.
Hey, Emmanuel. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Since the team that I root for, or the teams, as far as USC goes, with the Lincoln Riley signing.
Yes, USC. That's right. You have to bear with me. It's impossible for me to remember whom everybody roots for. But now that you said USC, this is our USC Arkansas guy. How could I forget?
Yeah, I think I'm like the only USC fan that's still around. But man, I mean, I would have been happy with Franklin or Kiffin, but I did not see this happening, and it's awesome. What a hire! What
Nobody saw
a
it.
Hollywood hire!
Nobody saw it happening. It's astonishing. Yes.
In baseball terms, what would this be? It's a grand slam, right?
It is the Grand Slam being the Grand Slam and nothing else could be higher. Let's stay with a home run. Home run higher. I'm not going to go Grand Slam. I'm not going to elevate him to the Nick Saban or even to the next level of Dabo Sweeney type higher yet.
I think those are the only two guys above him as far as
That are
who
currently
they could
coaching.
have had. Yeah.
They could have probably had Urban Meyer, maybe. I shouldn't say they probably could have had him because there are reports out that he has stated that he's not leaving the NFL, and it's his first year, obviously. So, yeah, those three guys.
That's
And Lincoln Riley, would I take anyone else over Lincoln Riley past those three? I would not. I agree.
Yeah, it's awesome. You see some of the stuff on his contract. There's stuff all over the place. $110 million. He bought both his houses in Norman, Oklahoma for $500,000 over the asking price
Wow.
of both his homes. They bought him a $6 million home in Los Angeles, and he has unlimited access to a private jet 24/7 for him and his family.
Okay. Well, he better deliver.
Pretty sweet deal. What do you think? How many seasons before USC's back in the playoff? I'm saying 2 seasons.
2 seasons. All right. So in 2023, they go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he has his first season. Gets a lot of transfer portal guys. People are going to be switching to USC. He's going to keep a lot of the USC talent. And next year, they're going to be fighting for the Pac-12 title.
Well, in terms of how quickly they could make this happen, I'm going to go to the schedule because not that USC is going to be one of the 4 best teams in the country next year, but they play in arguably, well, it is the worst conference in college football right now. Before I would have said arguably, but this year it's the worst. They, of course, always play Notre Dame, and they only have Fresno State outside the conference. So they've got all conference games and Notre Dame. They could go to the playoffs next year.
Yeah. I mean, it was the best job in college football. Why wouldn't you be a major coach and go to a fertile recruiting ground in a conference that is terrible? I mean, this was like Miami back in the day in the Big East.
True. That's a good good analogy. I'll take that. This conference is better than the Big East, but it's similar.
Yeah, a little bit better than that, but yeah.
The
other thing is, hey,
I was going to say the only distinction I would make would be that if he doesn't win huge, if they're just basically good, like let's say Oregon good, they lose a couple games every year, and even if they're winning Pac-12 titles, if the Pac-12 does not raise its game and USC is not able to go undefeated or maybe lose one game, then you get caught in kind of obscurity.
Yeah, but I think because of the USC name, if they lose early, let's say they lose an early game and they go and they have one loss because of the USC name, I think some committee, like in Ohio State, like one of those teams, they put them in.
All right, man. Anything else you got for us?
One last thing, because I know you got a ton of callers. The early recruiting, this early recruiting that's coming up is kind of ruining college football in a way, because you're seeing that, like Chip Kelly, Notre Dame's still in the hunt for the playoff, and he left because of early recruiting. That's why they hired him at this time, and I mean, it ruins the season for Notre Dame. And it kind of, it's not good for college football. What do you think?
I understand what you're saying. A previous caller made the same point. I don't see where it's really changed anything. So what we had in the past was National Signing Day, the first Wednesday of February, and we had the same situation in regards to when coaches were being fired and hired. We're still going to have a situation, even if the recruiting cycle went back to February, where if USC is looking for, or let's take that Notre Dame example, Notre Dame LSU. If LSU is looking for a coach, they're still going to go after Brian Kelly. And if Brian Kelly wants that job, he's going to accept the job. And Notre Dame is not going to want him to stick around long enough to coach a college football playoff game, because he's going to be a lame duck coach. So the recruits are still kind of left out there needing to know who the next coach is going to be.
True. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And with the playoff, especially if you expand the playoff, that thing's going to get, there'll be coaches that will be coaching longer because, hey, this team makes the playoff every year, even if they get kicked out, and they're not a powerhouse. But I guess last thing I'll say, if you would have been a Notre Dame player today, would you shown up at 7 a.m. for that meeting?
Oh, absolutely, I would.
Really?
Yes.
Why? Your coach is abandoning you. Why would you give him the time?
I'm not giving him the time. I'm giving my teammates the time. I have an obligation to my teammates. They are my teammates, as they like to state, which I think is a little overblown at times, not all the time, but at times, their brotherhood. I'm there for my teammates, number one. Number two, I am there to possibly get an opportunity to have my voice be heard and look Brian Kelly in the eyes, possibly. I don't know how the meeting transpired, and be able to say, you told us A, B, and C. You didn't live up to it. Bye. But just know that you turned your back on us, or whatever their feelings are about the situation. Absolutely, I show up. I would regret, just because I got an extra hour of sleep, I would regret a week later that I didn't show up for the experience of going through that. That's real life. That is a real life experience that you don't get every day.
Fair. That's a really great point, Mark. Well, as always, hey, thank you so much for always giving us your insight and the platform.
Well, I appreciate
have
it.
a great night. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Bye. Of course.
Yeah, I'm into taking advantage of those type of opportunities. I was I was always the one at my previous employer to take advantage, or even if the advantage wasn't given to me, or the opportunity, I should say, making the opportunity to speak to whomever I had a issue with that was a level or 2 or 10 above me. Believe me. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Evening, Mark. It's Andrew. How are you, sir?
Hey, Andrew. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I am not going to have another chance to speak to you before championship weekend, so I wanted to call and get my take on the Alabama and Georgia SEC championship game out a little early, if you don't mind.
Heck yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, the great thing about Alabama and Georgia both playing in the SEC is that you can look at a lot of common opponents that each one has faced throughout the regular season.
You're speaking my language, not to cut you off, Andrew, but I actually took a lot of notes on that very thing, and I'm going to be producing a video to do exactly that. Go ahead.
Well, I hope I don't steal any of your thunder, but
go to it.
It's pretty striking, the statistics that Alabama and Georgia have put up against their common opponents, those being Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, and Florida. I think the talk around this game is going to be, can Georgia be tested by Alabama's offense? Because, Alabama has Bryce Young. They have talented wide receivers. And Georgia, of course, has one of the best defenses that we've seen in college football in many years. But looking at the same opponents that these teams have played, Georgia has 146 points for them against those opponents and 34 points against, which is an incredible 112-point differential. Alabama, on the other hand, scored 3 more total points than Georgia put up against those teams for 149, but they allowed 110 for a pitiful separation of 39 points. And if you take out the Tennessee game, the discrepancy is even worse. I'm not gonna say what the numbers are. I have them, but I want to take all the common opponents into account and not discount one just because it makes Georgia look a little bit better.
Yeah.
Georgia is going to destroy Alabama in the SEC championship game because while a lot of Alabama, I live in Mobile, Alabama, and I hear a lot of talk from Alabama fans about Georgia not being able to do it against Alabama for years. When both teams have come into a big game ranked, Alabama gets the best of them. And that is the talking point across the nation this week that I've heard so far. And that is exactly what I want the Georgia Bulldog football team to be hearing. People think that Alabama is going to come into the game and they're going to give Georgia their best shot. Wrong. Georgia is going to give Alabama their best shot. Alabama should be terrified of what is coming into Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday. And Georgia is going to bury them in a shallow grave underneath Atlanta on the 4th. They have no chance. Georgia wants to erase the past so badly. They're not looking ahead to anybody. And I can promise you that as focused as Georgia is on winning the national championship, I would argue that they want the SEC championship victory against Alabama in particular as much, if not more, at this point than the national championship. Alabama is going to have Georgia's entire focus, and Georgia has been focused the entire season. This game is already over. It's going to be a 20-point victory for Georgia. I'm saying that the score is going to be 44-24 Georgia. You can book it. And anyone that thinks that this game is going to be closer has not been watching either team all season long. And that's all I got, Mark. It's great talking to you, and I hope you have a great rest of the week and enjoy these games coming up over the weekend. Take care.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. So I'm going to say a few things to both refute what he said, but mostly to agree with. There can be no refuting what he said in regards to what the performance has been by Alabama against those 4 teams, I believe. I believe it's 4 because they play 2 in each division. So it would be Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, and who else did Alabama play? Florida. Yeah. So, and I tend to look at the teams that are better as being the more valid comparison. But those 4 teams are roughly the same. Obviously, Florida slid off the table near the end of the year, but they're 4 mid-level teams in the SEC. And there's no comparison between Georgia's performance against those 4 and Alabama's. You can just look at it in any way, shape, or form. It's not even close. But, and I think he made a great statement about just, a few things came to mind here. Number one would be that there's no comparison between the metrics between the 2 teams against common opponents. And that's 4 decent quality opponents. I do go back to a 2018 matchup between Ohio State and Michigan in which I lined up the common opponents between the 2 teams, and there was no comparison. Both teams came into the game at 10-1. Michigan played supremely better against all those common opponents than Ohio State did, and then Ohio State buried Michigan head-to-head. So there has been some precedent for that before. I do have a certain level of trust. Obviously, you would have to be a complete moron not to have a certain level of trust for Nick Saban and his coaching staff, because when has Nick Saban been blown out? Okay, I will answer that question because I was waiting for people to chime into the live chat. When has Nick Saban been blown out? I would expect the first answer for anyone to give to be the 2018 national championship game against Clemson. Understandably so. 44-16, 4 touchdowns. That's a blowout. In the first quarter, it wasn't a blowout. Actually, Alabama had control of the game from a standpoint of they were the more dominant team. They led 16-14. They blew a chance at a touchdown. I won't go through all the statistics and the game scenarios, but basically the first half was close. Then Alabama got blown out. Other than that, that would be the one time that Nick Saban really in any game, not just important games. So Urban Meyer got blown out against Iowa, got blown out against Purdue, which would have been considered, those are throwaway games. Those aren't even necessarily big games for Ohio State, but they became big games once they lost them. Had they won them, it would have just been another win, another win, another win. So Nick Saban has not had those type of games. And on top of that, even against the best teams, has not been blown out. Obviously, he's rarely lost. So I will just point to the track record of Nick Saban not getting blown out. My next point, or what comes to mind in listening to the last caller, and I am the last person that is the, expert or amateur psychologist. I do not play that. I just am not the person that tries to guess who has psychological advantage over the other team, the other person. I read indicators just like everybody else. I read it in people's eyes. I read it on their faces. I read it in games. We could see a definite psychological warfare going on, Ohio State, Michigan in particular, in which it's easy to go into the game thinking, okay, there is a psychological factor here. And we saw it flip. But I'm not the one that tries to figure out, like you hear these sideline reporters during these games, and it's unbelievable how amazing they are at reading people's minds. I'm constantly fascinated at this. The sideline reporters telling us who's confident, who's not confident, who's worried, who's frustrated. Okay, it's a bit much. It's a football game. There are people that are mad and frustrated. It's an emotional sport. Okay. That being said, I kind of wonder the way Nick Saban has talked about this particular team in this season. because he tends to be hard on the teams that he knows are great. He tends to come down on them because he knows this is a great team. I can drive these guys and I'm going to squeeze the greatness out of them. Where when he's got a little bit of a lesser team like this team, he tends to support them. If anything, he says after every game when they get criticized for barely beating LSU, barely beating Auburn, barely beating Arkansas, what does he do? He comes to the defense of his team, talks about what great student athletes they are, that they work hard, they do all the right things, they're gamers, they showed a lot of resilience. When that's a great Alabama team and they barely get by those kind of opponents, what does he do? The standard's the standard. The process is the process. We failed here. We didn't do this well enough. We didn't do that well enough. Shoot, they win games by 40 points, and he lets them know and the media know, we didn't do this. We didn't do that. We're not good enough. We need to get better. But this team, he's propping up. Maybe I'm just reading into that. Again, I don't want to play amateur psychologist. That's the last thing I want to do. But that's the way it kind of hits me. And he did it again just the other day during his news conference in talking about his team. And he's lifting them up. He's trying to instill some confidence in them. All right, we got some great super chats coming in. Appreciate that so much. Travis Walker had one that had nothing attached to it, so I moved on. But Travis, thank you so much for the contribution. Don here says, Mark, the hardest working man on these YouTube streets. Thank you for that, Don. Appreciate that. We would like to go from being the hardest working to the best performing. That's the goal. When we can go from hardest working, and I appreciate everybody who tells me that I work hard. I'm glad that you notice that, recognize that, and appreciate that. But we want to take that from hardest working to best performing. So that's what we're working on with these channels. We want them to be the best performing. So that's our aim, goal, and mission, as we say all the time. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. Is that true all the time? Got to admit, not all the time, but that's the goal every day. Let me make sure I did not miss any other super chats coming down. We appreciate Matthew Stevenson. Thank you so much for that. Aiden Hutchinson for Heisman. I know it's a long shot, but I can dream. Yes, you can dream, you can talk, you can promote. Absolutely. Let's rename the Heisman Trophy Award and the description of such as the best quarterback and maybe running back or wide receiver. That's what the award is. It's not the best player in college football, because if it were, he would have a serious argument. I'm not saying that he's hands down the best player in the sport. Way back when, an NFL scout or a player personnel director in the NFL, plus coaches on the opposing teams that have to break down game tape, would have told you in 1996 that Orlando Pace was the best player in college football. He played offensive tackle. He's not going to win the Heisman, even though people that know football would tell you he's the best player. It's not the best player. The Heisman Trophy is awarded to the best quarterback and maybe running back or wide receiver. But thank you for the super chat. Hutchinson was amazing again this past weekend against Ohio State with 3 sacks and a number of quarterback pressures. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark, Travis, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. What's going on tonight?
No, nothing. Just hanging out, listening to the Voice of College Football.
Cool.
So what do you think would be Mark Rogers' top 4, say, chaos ensues and 2 through 5 all lose this weekend?
All right. Iowa beats Michigan. Baylor beats Oklahoma. No. Houston beat Cincinnati and Alabama. So Georgia wins. Okay. All right. Georgia's in. Then we've got an Iowa. We've got who wins the Big 12 championship?
Baylor.
Baylor. Okay. Trying to make it tough on me. All right. Cincinnati's out. They're a non-Power 5 champion with an awful schedule, and now they've lost a game. Done. All right. We've got to compare Oregon, Baylor, Iowa, all 11-2. And if we really want to be fair about it, the winner of the ACC championship game is going to be 11-2. All right. So we got 4 conference champions who are 11-2.
He's saying Utah wins.
No, we're going to make it tougher on me. Aren't we going to make Oregon the winner? Because,
no, let's make Utah the winner.
All right. Then we kill the Pac-12. You made it easier on me. Okay. They're done. Pac-12's done. And we've got Notre Dame. Okay. Notre Dame's in 11-1. So now we've got 2 other spots, and we've got Baylor, Iowa, Pitt, let's say, and we've got Alabama. What is the score of the SEC championship game?
No, Georgia wins by 2 touchdowns or more.
Okay. I believe that Iowa and Baylor would be in the college football playoff. Am I missing something?
Iowa, Baylor.
Yeah.
No, I just want to see what you thought. Now is Jameson Williams, he was hit for targeting in that last game, right?
Yeah, was that in the first half of the
Will he be sitting out the first half of the next game?
Well, let me I talked to our Alabama guy today, Gary Harris, and he didn't mention that, and I wondered about that too because I watched the second half of the game. I didn't see the first half. So at what point in the game?
Because that's going to be a big deal.
Was the targeting in the first half or the second half?
Shit, you got me there.
See, that's what we need to look up.
Jameson Williams is their offense.
Absolutely, he is. So somebody's going to be able to answer this in the chat, I'm sure, because if it was in the first half, I don't know if it was
first or second half.
Yeah, well, that makes a huge deal because he either was going to miss the rest of the game, which was going to be the second half, and then he's back. Okay, it says first half, so he's back.
So he's back. Okay.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 people are telling us. Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, that would be a big loss for them. I think that's going to be a great game. Like that one call, that last caller kind of reminded me of how people were saying Ohio State was going to do to Michigan. Done deal. It's over. Ohio State's got this. And, on any given weekend, this is what I said, any given weekend, any team can lose to anybody no matter what. And you never can count out Nick Saban. I mean, it's just like betting against Tom Brady. I mean, it's just hard to do. And any given weekend, any team can lose. And I got to tip my hat to Michigan. I mean, they went out and beat Ohio State down. I mean, they took over the game. From the only thing that they didn't get wrong was the coin toss. They lost the coin toss. I mean, that's it. And after that, it was, they did everything they were supposed to do, and Ohio State didn't. Ohio State shot themselves in the foot, penalty after penalty. I mean, on every drive, it was something. Penalty, jumping on the ball, snap. I mean, just some little minute thing that they shot themselves in the foot, and it finally caught up with them. And that defense, it's like they reverted back to that defense from week 1 and 2. It's just like everything that, was happening earlier in the season, they kind of reverted back to. I think Michigan played their game of the year, and Ohio State really did not play their game of the year. And it was still, a 1-score game there in the fourth quarter for a minute, for a little bit. And they just made too many mistakes. And, this Ohio State defense has not been what it should, Ohio State football defense should be and has been in the past. And I think a lot of changes are going to be made on that defense. What do you think about Marcus Freeman coming home
To coach the defense?
at Ohio State?
Well, I think that Marcus Freeman was in a situation at Notre Dame with Brian Kelly as the coach where he probably, and this was probably some of the recruitment to get him from Cincinnati to Notre Dame, with a thought that he would be the next coach at Notre Dame, thinking, okay, Brian Kelly is going to move on or do something else or be in the NFL or whatever he would do. And he's not an old person, but he is an older coach, and that Marcus Freeman might have the job in 3 to 4 years. But if you bring in another head coach to Notre Dame, well, then that changes that dynamic. So that could possibly cause him to want to leave. That's a possibility. And if he's, I don't know what his attachment
he is ready. He is
Ohio
ready
State.
for his own program, though. He's ready for his own program, I feel like. But I also could see him coming back to, where it all started for him. And, I thought it might be crazy to have old Mark D'Antonio, get him out of retirement and bring him back. That would be a interesting hire.
Do you think Mark D'Antonio would want to coach defense at Ohio State?
Well, he has the ties. He's a hell of a coach,
Well, he's
defensive
a hell of
coach.
a coach. He was coaching Michigan State. He was winning
Right.
Big Ten championship games and Rose Bowls. And everybody's different. Some guys kind of go off into retirement and think, okay, I still want to work, but I'm done with the pressure and I'm done with a certain aspect of it. And that could be the case. But it just from the
Right.
standpoint of a guy that was leading a program that was one of the top 10 teams in the country for about 5 or 6 years to being a defensive coordinator under a guy that's like 20 years younger. I just don't know if that's what he wants.
Yeah, I think there's going to be people leaving or fired, and I don't know who else is out there to. I mean, who would you think would be candidates for a position like that?
Oh,
I
wow.
think changes will be made.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the last time I really thought that Ohio State, outside of 2019, that I really thought Ohio State had a great defense might have been 2015. I think they've not been as good as they should be on that side of the ball ever since. Again, except for that Chase Young, Jeff Okuda defense in 19.
Well, that Jeff Hafley year was pretty decent.
Yeah, in 19. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, 19. All right. Well, it's going to be interesting how all this plays out. I think Alabama has a chance. I mean, Ohio State's number 4 receiver transfers Alabama and he's leading the SEC right now. And without Jameson Williams transferring, I don't think Alabama has 2 losses. Or I think they have more losses than they do.
Yeah, you would think so.
I think it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. I just want to see all chaos into it. I want to see all these teams lose and just put it all on the committee and just screw everything up. Looking
I'm right
forward
there
to
with
it.
you. I would love it.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see. Well, Mark, you have a good night. Get to your other callers. Talk to you later, buddy.
Appreciate the call, man. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
I got to tell you guys, I appreciate hearing from some new people. It's awesome when somebody says that they've been watching or listening for a long time or a short time and they decided to call. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Willie. Glad to talk to you again.
Willie, how are you?
Well, I'm still getting over that Ohio State
Well,
game.
sure,
I watched
yeah.
it 6 times on tape.
6 times.
Can I talk?
Put yourself through
6
that.
times. I wanted to see what was the real problem. And I did not like what I was seeing, let me tell you. And I'll start off with Ryan Day needs to go read Bill Belichick's book on how to win football games. You got to take the other team's best player out of the game. We should have been double teaming Hutchinson every play.
You can't let one player affect the whole game the way he did. Excuse me. Sacks, penalties. He made outside, inside moves. He just affected the game with his play, and that was all on Day. Then I'll start out with Day's preparation for that game. It was terrible. He went into that game thinking it was another game. I don't know if he knew who we were playing. Maybe he thought because we blew out Michigan State, we could just run these same slant plays and run Wilson down the sidelines once, and everything was going to be fine. I mean, he got down there 2nd and 3 on our first drive at the goal line. Why did he even try to pass? He brings in 16 and 34 on that jumbo look, and it ain't worked all year. And we're going against an assistant coach in the NFL that knows what he's doing. Harbaugh's assistants ate up our assistants. We got out coached that game. We got out prepared. It was like a heavyweight fight. They came out and hit us in the mouth, and that was it. I mean, what they averaged in the second half, 10 yards a carry.
Yeah.
We never changed our defense the whole game. We went with a base defense. We never brought the safety down in the box. Why didn't the linebackers even step up in the line just to confuse the offensive linemen? I mean, Haskell Garrett, how he was on the first team All Big Ten after I watched that game. I mean, he was standing up and turning his back on the offensive lineman and getting pushed out of the way. And another, 35, whoever he is, he was just terrible. All the linebackers were terrible but 22. Yeah, all the linebackers were terrible but 22. But his play calling, I mean, it was just terrible. But the two defensive coordinators, I mean, they were terrible. They never made one adjustment that whole game. We went with a base defense. I mean, they must have not been on the sidelines watching the game, or they were sick or something, because they were just doing the same thing over and over again. And they told us before the game what they were going to do. They said, we're going to sit back and rush 4 guys. We might blitz one in a while. We're going to try to run the ball. That's what they've done all year. But no, we're not. I don't know what we were doing. I still, after watching that game 6 times, I'm even more confused than I was when I watched it live. But those two, we need to find a couple defensive coordinators. There's no way we can bring back those 2 guys. Not the way we played against. They did the same thing Oregon did. They shifted their line, and they got 4 or 5 linemen on one side. We got 3 linemen. I say, come on. And I've never seen guys go in untouched from inside the 5 on goal line defense. But we never had a goal line defense. Our defense at the goal line was our base defense. They went in reverse, and the guy didn't get touched till the 2-yard line. I mean, those defensive coordinators, no adjustments. They were just terrible. And I was in Buckeye Nation at the start of the year, and my prediction at the start of the year was Ohio State would have 3 losses. Now, these people hated me so much, and I got so much grief on that website, I had to close my account. I said they'd lose one of their first 2 games, and then I said they'd lose another Big Ten game, but I was thinking it was going to be Penn State. And then I'd say they'd lose their bowl game because they wouldn't make the college playoffs. And when we go to the bowl game, you got to figure Olave and Wilson definitely aren't playing. I mean, I don't know why any seniors going to go in the first couple rounds are going to play in a bowl game that's not in that championship playoff. So I don't know. They got us playing the winner of the Pac-10 the way our rush defense is. If it's Utah, look out. I mean, I think we'll have trouble no matter who we play in the bowl if we got guys sitting out. I don't know who's sitting out on the defense. I don't think it really matters. I mean, I just can't understand why we just never stacked the line. I mean, we never changed anything. I mean, you knew what we were going to get. Those guys were going to play the game of their life, and we just didn't match their intensity or their coaching or anything about it.
Well, let me say
it
this,
was
Willie.
just a total disaster.
And since you've watched the game 6 times, I want you to answer a question for me or just give me your observation because I only watched it live. I haven't watched any replays or anything. Is that the difference that I would say in Ohio State's rush defense, Oregon versus Michigan, is that Michigan and Oregon were equally as successful and effective. But in just watching the game on TV, Ohio State was consistently out of position against Oregon. Oregon was consistently like running around a short end on the short side of the field, and you wouldn't see an Ohio State defender on the TV screen. Like, they were gashing them. They were out scheming them. This is my initial thought, just watching live, that they were out schemed more against Oregon, where they didn't know where they were. The assignments were their linebacker assignments were horrible against Oregon. They were lost. Against Michigan, they seemed to be in position. There were no like gaping ridiculous holes, or they weren't out of position. They just got bullied. Their defensive front just got pushed down the field.
The guys got stood up. The two tackles were terrible,
too high,
and the linebackers were terrible. And the offensive linemen were getting a free run at the linebackers in the second group there. So they're standing up to front four, and then they're hitting the linebackers. And then these guys, before you know it, they're in the secondary. I mean, they ran that scheme a couple times. We were probably out of position maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But basically, they just ran the same thing. And usually a team will step the linebackers up and put them right up over the nose of the guards and confuse the blocking. That's what we needed to do. And we needed to bring a safety down in the box. And if that quarterback beat us, let him beat us. I mean, I'm confused why we never changed it. We're running a base defense on short yardage. I mean, we just were, I don't know. It was poorly. Our defensive coordinators didn't make any adjustments, especially after that third. I mean, we're down 14-13 at half just because of that last drive. We got 3 points going down there because of his poor play calling. He's at the 45 with 3 timeouts. He doesn't call a timeout. They rush up, try to get a play and get a motion penalty and waste 20 seconds. And then he throws to Wilson in the end zone, which was clearly interference. I don't know how many times that guy has been grabbed in the end zone and hasn't got a call. He's probably been interfered with more than any receiver I've seen in college this year. But his play calling, and then we come out the second half. Those 3 rush plays, I'm still trying to comprehend those. He ran 5, then we ran 2, and then he brings in 16 and 34 in our jumbo package, and they sub their big boys in, and the guy don't even get to the line. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to have the best wide receivers in the country. We got the biggest game of the year, and we come out the second half down a point and run 3 plays and punt. Now, to me, I don't know what kind of a genius offensive coach is going to call those plays. I mean, I lost a lot of respect for Kay and his play and his head coaching. And I never had any for those defensive coordinators. I say bring in Chris Spielman. They need to get somebody moving on that defense because it's not going to change. Those 2 guys, it's not going to change. I mean, those guys just didn't know what they were doing against Oregon, and they didn't know what. They just didn't make any in-game adjustments. And now we're going to go into a bowl, and I don't know. We're going to have trouble in any bowl we go to because I don't know. Have you heard who's sitting out any of the bowl games? I mean, we're going to definitely lose some of our best players.
Yeah, it hasn't come out, but we'll find out soon.
I mean, I'm just. And Michigan celebrated like they won a Super Bowl. I mean, they wanted to beat us. I mean, that just shows you how bad they wanted to beat us and how bad we didn't want to beat them.
Willie, I think that game's bigger than the Super Bowl.
I mean, those guys I've seen epic proportions of this game, and I don't know. It was just a disaster, a coaching disaster, a player disaster. I can't believe it. I just couldn't believe the play call and those 3 runs to start the second half, and then they run 3 plays and go 81 yards.
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Like you say, Willie, if Ohio State couldn't throw and catch the ball better than any team in the country, they would have gotten completely obliterated. Like when Stroud threw that 4th down touchdown pass to Henderson that barely made it over Aiden Hutchinson's fingertips, that made it 35-27. I thought there's still 4.5 or 5 minutes left in this game. I thought
the exact same thing.
If they steal this game, I'll think they have no business winning this game, but they still could steal this game. If they could just get a stop on defense, they can steal this game. But they couldn't stop them on defense.
Then we knew they were going to run, and here we come out. That was the worst. That was the worst defensive line play. I mean, Haskell Garrett. I mean, I never seen him play that bad. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was hurt or something, but their defensive interior and their linebackers, they were just terrible. But like you said, when we scored and cut it to 1 score, there is no excuse. You got to put 8 guys in the box. I don't care. Make this guy throw. They might get a holding penalty. We might tip the ball. You can't let them run the ball. That's all they wanted to do. And then we didn't do it. We should have had everybody on the line that last series. And we should have been double teaming Hutchinson the whole game. I don't care. I watch Bill Belichick do that every Sunday. That guy for the Browns, he's got the most sacks in the league. Cleveland, he goes against the Patriots. The Patriots got 2 guys on him from the time they ran on the field. I mean, you can't. I mean, Michigan. Joe Buell, he did was run by the quarterback most of the game.
Well,
Hutchinson.
Yep.
How many false starts did we get?
A million.
We had 13 penalties and they had 2.
Yep.
And I bet half of them were guys moving.
Here's the deal, Willie, and then I'll need to let you go. Is that I think there are two positions on the field where even if you've got, let's say, a first-round NFL player and the other team's got a first-round NFL player, you're still at a huge disadvantage. One's at wide receiver against a cornerback, because you can take a decent wide receiver against a first-round NFL cornerback, and it is still really hard to play cornerback and hold up. If the quarterback's got all day, a decent wide receiver is going to tear up a first-round NFL cornerback. It's just the nature of the position. It's impossible to cover those guys for a long period of time. It's the same thing at tackle versus a D end. Ohio State's got a first-round NFL left tackle, but he cannot block maybe the best defensive end in the country by himself.
Exactly. That's why we should have been double teaming him. I don't know why we did. I don't understand it. That's like walking the other team's best hitter when he comes up. What would be the worst thing that Michigan would happen to them? You double team that guy. They don't want you double teaming that guy. I mean, I don't know.
Have one
you
less.
Hit it right on
exactly.
The head.
Have one less player out in the route. We have the best receivers in the country. We don't need another guy in the route. Keep the tight end in.
I know. That tight end catch one pass. I mean,
like a 3-yard pass.
I mean, that was just poor. That was poor coaching and poor preparation. But I won't bore you anymore, Mark. But I'm not going to watch it again. I still got it, but I'm not going to watch it again. I'm just wondering. And I got one comment for these guys that think Nick Saban's such a great coach. Nick Saban is a great coach in college. He's at a school that recruits itself, and he's a great recruiter. But all I got to tell them is, how great was he in the NFL when you coach against equal talent? I don't think he did too well at Miami. He had to leave Miami. I mean, there's a difference between being an overall great coach and being a great college coach. I mean, and he had a decent team at Miami, but I mean, plus Alabama has been awful lucky this year. They've won every close game. I don't think we had a close game except the 2 we lost, did we? I mean, they barely beat Florida. They barely beat Auburn.
Yep.
Who else did they barely beat?
Arkansas,
they lost to A&M with the backup quarterback.
Yep.
Arkansas, LSU. That's 4 they barely beat. And I'll talk to you this about Chip Kelly. why he wants to go to LSU. It has to be the money. Because, does he know what kind of schedule he's going to face? At Notre Dame, they pick their own schedule. I mean, he should have told him, man, maybe I'll give me some more money. I'll stay there. That's got to be the dream job. I mean, at Notre Dame, you're going to get once they expand the playoffs, they're probably in every year, and LSU might not be.
All right, Willie.
But
I appreciate it.
that's it. Sorry I took up so much of your time,
That's all
but
right.
I've been trying to get through to tell you what I felt about that Ohio State game.
Well, thanks a lot, Willie. We always
And
appreciate
I'll
it.
tell you, you got the best show going because a lot of these other podcasts, these Michigan guys, why they think they can keep Ohio State fans coming and liking their podcasts with some of the stuff they say after a game like that, it really doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I'll just let it go at that, Mark. Thanks a lot, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds good, Willie. Have a good night. All right. I want to remind everyone that if you own a small business like I do, it's just me, but I do own a small business. And, or if you would like to start a small business, maybe you've got an idea and think, I can't really do this. I don't have the business credit. I need lines of credit. I need money. I need financing. And maybe you don't have confidence in your personal credit. Rest assured, Josh Van Horn's got you covered there at Business Credit. Get Business Credit. It's on the bottom of the screen very soon here. Get Business Credit. And check out Josh's YouTube channel, which is exploding. And it's exploding because he's helping people and teaching people how to get business credit. So please check out Josh and what he's got available there. It's right here on YouTube. All right, let's take these 3 calls. And then I desperately would like to get something to eat. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, what's up? This is Will, the Michigan man. How you doing?
Will, the Michigan man. That's a catchy little phrase. How you doing?
Oh, yeah. I like to keep it classy. You're doing pretty good, Mark. How you doing tonight?
I am doing well. What's on your mind?
Man, I've been itching to call you. I just wanted to say something about this game Saturday. I know pretty much everybody's been talking about it. It's kind of the talk of the town. You know, I just want to say, and I know some of the Ohio State fans, and I'm going to be sensitive to the subject. I know you're an Ohio State fan. And I know they're going to be lighting me up on the comment thread, but I just want to tell you, I was one of the fans that really did see this coming. I know, you know, a lot of Michigan fans are going to say they did, but there really was a select few Michigan fans that really did see the potential of us winning that game, not blowing them out or roughing them around. But here's what I saw. I saw an Ohio State team that flubbed the game against Oregon and then didn't look really good against Tulsa and then found their identity early in the season and moved on and was dominating after that. And I felt like Michigan State, that game against Michigan State was the same situation for us. I know it was later in the season, but I felt like that was a flub game. I didn't for a minute think that they were the better team, but I understood that we still lost. And, we ended up winning several more games after that. That game against Maryland, I mean, we pretty much dominated that game. And I felt like it was the same situation. And I had been telling people, because my father-in-law is an Ohio State fan. He went to Ohio State. And I was trying to tell him at Thanksgiving, it's the same situation as Ohio State when they played Oregon. It was just a flub game. And he couldn't see it. And it was astounding to me that all week I listened to a lot of Ohio State podcasts. I like to listen to what the enemy's thinking, what the other side is thinking. And I've heard more people on Ohio State looking ahead to Georgia and talking about Georgia rather than talking about Michigan. And
yeah, well, that's ridiculous. That's pathetic.
Right. And I have a great reverence for Ohio State because that's just part of the rivalry. I respect the rivalry. And I don't care what Paul Feinbaum says, and I'm not going to go off on that, but he talked about Auburn, Alabama is the real rivalry. There's nothing that can come close to that. It's like the Palestinians and Israelis living together. Look, I grew up in Mississippi. I'm back living there now, but I lived in Michigan too. It's not even close. It's not even close. Paul Feinbaum is an self-admitted SEC homer that favors the SEC, particularly Alabama, in every sense. It's not even close. My dad's a diehard Alabama fan. He met Nick Saban. Not Nick Saban. He met Bear Bryant when he was a kid. It's not even close. Ohio State versus Michigan is the premier rivalry in North America. You lose friendships over it. Some people take it too seriously. But I want to say that one thing Woody Hayes said, and there's a documentary called The 10-Year War talking about when him and Bo went at it. And he said that in regards to the 1969 game, when you have a team that's playing for pride, that's a dangerous thing, because pride, a team that has nothing but pride on the table, that you've got to really treat that carefully because that's a dangerous team that's playing for pride. And I felt like Ohio State didn't really look at that. It wasn't, I felt like they just weren't prepared. It was more, and I know they prepared in the sense to where this is Michigan. Oh, we hate Michigan and all that, all rah-rah stuff. But I felt like they were preparing to just beat Michigan, and they weren't prepared to take this seriously at all. And that's what cost them the game. And I was listening to your caller, Willie, talking, and I agree with everything he's saying. But one thing that I heard him say that I've heard a lot of other Ohio State fans is they didn't make any adjustments. And, there's things they probably could have done differently. But, Mark, in my opinion, it was five-star talent against five-star talent, and one side of the ball wanted it more than the other. And Michigan, it's elite talent versus elite talent, and Michigan is coming into this with a chip on each one of their shoulders. And Ohio State's coming in we're just going to beat Michigan. Let's just come on in here and beat them. And Michigan came out swinging, and you saw as the game progressed, Ohio State players started getting frustrated. We saw Cameron Brown ripped the helmet off a Michigan player. You saw a lot of false starts. It was just a lot of evident frustration because they didn't think it was going to be that hard. And I think Ryan Day is to blame, but I'm going to tell you what, I think the culture is to blame too. I've already heard people talking about getting rid of Ryan Day now. This is his first Big Ten loss. Are you kidding me? I understand he inherited a good team, but, y'all are going to talk about getting rid of him. I'm not talking about you, Mark, but, that is ridiculous. You just got to understand some of these Michigan State people some of these Ohio State fans got to understand Michigan can sneak up on them. And I just want to reference it to Ole Miss versus Alabama in 2014. I think Alabama was ranked like number 1. That was when they had game day in Oxford, and Katy Perry was there, and she picked Ole Miss to win. But Alabama, they just thought they were the superior team, and they went to Oxford and played Ole Miss, and Ole Miss beat them. And I believe Alabama was ranked number 1 then. And all I heard all week was Alabama fans saying, "Hey, don't worry about it. We'll get them next year in Tuscaloosa. Next year they're going to be in our house." Well, you know what? Next year Ole Miss went to Tuscaloosa and beat them there. Mm-hmm. They didn't respect them. They respected them after that. And I've heard a lot of Ohio State fans saying that. Don't worry, we'll have them at the shoe. Well, hey, if y'all want to think that, I hope y'all's coach thinks that too, because they'll come to the shoe and do the same thing. You've got to respect your enemies. You got to have respect for the team you're playing, because what happened Saturday was, I'm not going to say a manhandling, but I don't think it was a situation where strategy failed. I think it was a mindset. I think they came in there and they just didn't think that it was going to be what it was. And, I've been hearing things, and I follow a lot of the players on Twitter, and I've been to several games and met some of the players, and I can feel something different this year. A lot of Michigan fans were talking about it. This is a different team. And I'm not talking about like Chase Winovich and the revenge tour. I'm talking about serious talent, and I knew they were going to bring something. I didn't think it was going to turn out the way it did. But, talking about running off your coach, and, we just got to understand Michigan can beat Ohio State. You can't just push your coach off a plank. And, it was just five-star talent versus five-star talent, and one side wanted it more, and that's what happened.
There you go.
That's just what I want.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it was. So, and, that's really all I wanted to say, though, man. One side wanted it more, and Ohio State fans, that's fine. You can be mad at Ryan Day. Do whatever you want to do. But if if they don't take this seriously, it'll happen again next year. And it's already working in our favor this year, and it's going to work. If we beat y'all next year, it's going to work even more in our favor. And I mean, I have to ask you one thing though, Mark. Are you at least excited that the rivalry is actually back to being like an actual rivalry now?
No, that does not excite me in any such way. I want to win every year.
Well, I understand you for wanting that, man, but we'll see what happens. I just wanted to just kind of speed my point on it, man. Let's change the culture, man. Ohio State fans, change the culture. Quit just expecting to win every year. This is going to keep going downhill for y'all if y'all keep doing that.
Well, thanks for the call, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night. You too.
All right. Well, a lot of the stuff that he said there was it's pretty much conjecture. Just because a team loses a game doesn't mean it's lost its culture. So maybe it has, maybe it has not. But everybody loses games at some point. The thing that has to be understood too is that we don't know that Ohio State went in there expecting to win or just assuming a win, let's say. We don't know that Ohio State was arrogant and overconfident. Who knows that? We could have said that every year for the last 20 years, practically. I have stated on here many times that I am and was fascinated that and impressed to a certain extent that Ohio State could stay that fixated and that obsessed with Michigan. Think about human nature. What is human nature? Human nature would tell you that if you whip up on an opponent, regardless of what your coach is telling you, regardless of what the rest of the state is telling you about how important this game is and that it's this great tradition, these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old. All they know is that we whip them every year. Big deal. I don't care about what happened in 1975. This is today, and we know that they're no good because we whip them. So I have been astounded that Ohio State has been able to maintain this type of focus and obsession with Michigan, beating them that consistently year after year after year after year. Just think about that from the standpoint of human nature, and trying to convince a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, yes, they are a serious threat. We need to be focused. I'm not talking about telling them the day of the game, telling them that in March, telling them that in August, talking about that in the weight room, having signs up everywhere to remind Ohio State players that this rivalry is everything. And here's the countdown clock. Anybody in their right mind would think, why are you showing us a countdown clock to a game that we win every year? Why don't you show us a countdown clock to the team that, to Clemson like they did, or whomever they lost to that particular year before? Show us that countdown clock. Why do we need a countdown clock to a team that we whip every year? So if anything, I've actually been astounded that Ohio State's been able to maintain this kind of focus and obsession with Michigan. And maybe that went away this year. It looks like it did, but teams lose football games all the time. So maybe Ohio State just lost a football game. And there's a difference between and anybody who has competed, not just athletically, in a number of ways, know that there's a difference between giving it your best and really trying and giving it an honest, tough effort versus like being obsessed with your hair on fire, refuse to be denied, refuse to give up, and there's nothing wrong with the first category, but it doesn't work at this level of football. And to be able to coach a team to some level of fervor where they just can't be contained and they can't be denied, that doesn't just happen every time out, every game. And I know that it's easy for us to sit on our couches and say, why didn't they try harder? Why aren't they just obsessed and just... I believe that the effort was there. I just think that Michigan was so sick of losing, and just had it. Plus, they had the talent and the preparation and the previous results in the other 11 games to let them know we should be confident. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mike, it's Minnesota Dave.
Minnesota Dave. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Yeah, I have a couple questions for you. I'll make them quick. I watched the Minnesota game in Wisconsin, and there was a call on the first Wisconsin possession that the running back, they only had to go a couple inches to get a first down, and he hits the hole, and then he turns around himself, and then he gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage by Minnesota. I'm thinking to myself, obviously, he did not get the first down. But Wisconsin called on the refs call on forward progress. Wisconsin got the first down. He did not. He went by himself and tried to get more yards. And he got hit behind the line of scrimmage when he had the first down, obviously. I mean, I've seen this a couple of times. It's just even on replay calls. What is it with some of these refs even blowing the calls on replays?
I don't know what play you're talking about. I may or may not have seen it. I watched a good portion of that game, but I don't recall that particular play. So I really don't have much response to you other than to say that these guys are moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute. There are 22 of them on the field. There are going to be blown calls. Once they kick it up to replay, it's obviously their responsibility to get it right. I don't think it's a very difficult job once it goes to replay. I think that they should get it right 99.9% of the time. They do miss more calls in replay than they should. Sometimes it's a bit baffling. So I can't really answer your question having not seen the play.
And another thing I want to ask about, since the Notre Dame job is open, should I be worried about PJ Fleck? Maybe for Notre Dame.
I think that you should have a mild level of concern. I don't think he's going to be one of the top candidates, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he could be offered that job. But I think that they're going to look at Luke Fickell, maybe Marcus Freeman, Matt Campbell. I think they're looking in those directions. I believe. I might be wrong.
Yeah, well, it depends. He's been mentioned occasionally on a couple of the Notre Dame podcast channels that I listen to, but it to me it sounds like the way that when I mention him, a lot of those guys at the Notre Dame podcast channels basically say, yeah, he's just not a good fit for Notre Dame, and I kind of agree. I think he is more of a building him. He likes to build that program, a program where he's at right now himself, where he's at, instead of going to a traditional blue chip program and then try to do the same thing. I just don't think that would work for Notre Dame. Notre Dame is very traditional the way they want to do things. I don't know if they will be able to work with PJ the same way as he does in Minnesota.
Yeah, from a traditional standpoint, it seems like PJ is a little bit more of a personality than what Notre Dame typically goes for, although Lou Holtz is too. And they certainly found success there. But times do change and institutions do change to a certain extent. And I think being in 2021 is different than 1980. So Jerry Faust was a bit of a character as well. So the more I think about that, that's still a possibility from that standpoint. I really don't know what it's completely, when people spout out names, they're basically just taking the best coaches in the business that could use an upgrade and they're throwing them out there because we don't know what Notre Dame's looking for other than a coach that's going to run a model program off the field and is obviously going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you go because you are hungry and you want to eat. So
you noticed that. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah,
Minnesota
and I
Dave.
don't have anything else. And you too, Nick. Mike. I'm sorry, Mike.
All right. When people continue to ramble on and on after I've already clicked the button that's going to cut them off because they said goodbye. So anybody that ever calls me and believe that you got cut off, that's the reason why. I don't intentionally cut anybody off, but when you say goodbye, and then you continue to ramble on and on, well, I've already clicked the button. You're gone. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's One Scoop John.
One Scoop John. All right. One Scoop. What's
what
going on?
An absolutely crazy couple of days.
Yeah. I tell you.
I'm going to keep it real brief. I know you're hungry and everything, but I saw your video on Iowa versus. That's all right. I saw your videos on Iowa versus Michigan, and I was listening to the folks who were on, and it was a great debate. It was better than some of the actual shows on sports TV these days.
Wait a minute, really? We do a better show once in a while than those guys do? All right. We'll take that.
I think so. So this is kind of where I'm at with Iowa versus Michigan. I think you made some good points on the video about the 6 common opponents, and I think that there's a lot to that. I am very scared of the turnovers that Iowa has been able to deliver this year. So their defense, which I think is as strong as Wisconsin, if not stronger. The real key to the game for me on this one, and I think it's going to be 24-10, but I think the real key for Michigan to win is going to be you got to keep that defense out on the field. You got to control that time of possession. So Hassan Haskins is going to do that, short passes, all that good stuff, because you want to use that strength against them. They have one really elite phase and one phase that is questionable at best. That's being charitable. So let's wear down that defense, and let's by the fourth quarter, why not start airing it down like we did with Wisconsin? I feel like it's a similar game plan, don't you?
So I completely agree with you, but for slightly a different reason. So yeah, the longer you can keep Hassan Haskins on the field and that offensive line pushing them around, and you're obviously chewing up the clock. But I think that that's less to Michigan's advantage than it was certainly this past week. That was one of my 2 main ingredients to an upset last week was, number one, pass rush, Hutchinson, Ajabo against the 2 Ohio State tackles. And number 2 was I wanted to see it play out to see how Ohio State would respond defensively the week before against Kenneth Walker, but he was taken out of the game by a sore ankle and by the score of the game. So we didn't get to see what would happen if a good offensive line and a premier running back would lean on that defense for 4 quarters. Well, we got to see it at the next week in the Big House, and Ohio State did not respond well. So yes, that's a good ingredient, but it was doubly effective for Michigan against Ohio State because not only did it chew up yardage and eventually land in the end zone for the offense, it kept Stroud and those receivers on the sideline. With Iowa, it doesn't really matter how long you keep the quarterback and the receivers on the sideline. They're really not that effective. So whether they get, and I'm somewhat exaggerating because obviously you want to limit any team's opportunities to score, but that is less important against Iowa than almost any team Michigan's played in the Big Ten because they don't score anyway.
Right. Well, I was more referring to tiring out their defense.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
In the Wisconsin
Absolutely.
game earlier in the season, it actually was fairly tight for a while. And what really opened things up was when they played jump around, and Michigan somehow harnessed the energy of jump around to our advantage, which was actually what gave me an indication this might be a different season than usual. But I think also the defense started to get worn down. Wisconsin, just like Iowa, has an elite defense, or at least a very good defense. Not so good offense, with the exception of a few plays. And by the fourth quarter, we wore them down enough where we started to get some chunks of yardage. So I feel like from that perspective, I'm not too worried about their offense and keeping them out. I'm more worried about let's just get that defense as worn down as we possibly can to then start to gain those yardage, get those points.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Go eat, Mark.
Okay. Have a good one. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Let's line up one more call. But first, I'd like to remind everyone, we got to catch this super chat from our guy. This is Uncle Lou. Uncle Lou and I will record, I think it's Wednesday at noon. I would take that live, but I think I've only got a half hour, and he probably doesn't have much time either. I believe that's Wednesday at noon Eastern. I'm recording with Uncle Lou, so that should be a good time. And again, I would love to do that live, but I don't think we have enough time to really make that worthwhile. So Uncle Lou here with the super chat. Appreciate that extra $5 that I need. What's the spread on Ohio State versus Georgia in the playoffs? I'll hang up and listen. That's not a matchup that I believe is possible. So maybe, Lou, you're mistaken about possible playoff scenarios. So if you'd like to call me, or certainly not tonight, we can talk about it when we get together, that I will explain to you the playoff process as best that I can explain it, trying to interpret what this playoff committee determines to be valid results and metrics. So it's kind of me taking their approach and trying to explain it to you. But I can explain that Ohio State is really not, at this point, a candidate to make the playoffs against the mighty Georgia Bulldogs. So Georgia's going to have the opportunity, Lou, to add to its long list of national championships. They're going to have that opportunity. I don't know where this might be a question for you, Lou. In Sanford Stadium, where do they possibly get the room? Find the room in that stadium. The stadium is too small to handle and hang all those national championship banners. I don't think that's possible. How do they do it? They probably start to roll up the ones that are too old. The ones from maybe the 20s and the 30s, they roll those up and they put them away, because there's no way that they have enough space along the rim of that stadium to hang all those national championship banners. All right. Then we also have a super chat coming in from, it's our guy Falconer X, super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Falconer X. You know that we appreciate the super sticker. Keeps us going here at the Voice of College Football. Couple more to get in. Oh, Uncle Lou coming back here. Okay. Ohio State, man, last week, Ohio State will destroy Georgia in the playoff. Ohio State, man, today, Georgia will destroy Michigan in the playoff. Georgia and Michigan. Yeah, I want to see Georgia play Alabama. I haven't seen Georgia play anybody decent in so long. Yeah, they keep just stampeding these lousy teams in the SEC East. But yeah, Auburn, decent. Tennessee, decent. The Arkansas game, that's what really got me on the bandwagon for Georgia. We're also understanding, everyone, that we've got a host here in the Voice of College Football who released a preseason top 25. And I got a lot of criticism, a lot of heartache and pain over this one. Somebody sitting right here said the number one team in the nation, Georgia Bulldogs. Okay. I, in fact, remember in particular, although he didn't give me grief about it, our guy, David Greenshield, Ohio State fan who calls all the time, he said, did I actually watch a video in which you picked Georgia as the national champion, number one team in the country? And I said, yeah. And then it so happened like 2 days later, George Pickens got hurt. I'm like, seriously? Falconer X says, Steve Dace has not taken off his Michigan gear since the win. Why did Ohio State let Michigan back in? Oh, Falconer X. We could go on and on and on and on about that. But I'm going to have to talk negatively about that game now for another 362 days. What do we got coming in here? Falconer X again coming back. The reason we love college football is nobody has a crystal ball. That is why we pay and watch the games. Play and watch the games. We would play and watch the games. Where are those glasses? Where did I put those? Okay. Play and watch the games. Thanks, Falconer X. I have something close to a crystal ball, but it's only about 80% correct. It's the 80% correct crystal ball. And next up, Valdez. Thank you, Valdez. Appreciate that super chat. Thank you so much for that. Mark Rogers TV is clearly superior to other college football coverage. Well, Valdez, that's a nice comment for you to make. We are doing our best. That's all I'm going to say. If you guys could, and I appreciate the kind comments, believe me, if you could, based on my background and what I would expect out of myself and what I put on this college football platform, we are still expecting much better. So we are hoping to do better in the future. Right now, we're just spitting out content. I am just spitting it out like a conveyor belt or a factory line is kind of the approach right now. But we will do better in the future. But thank you, Valdez, for that. Last call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, it's high times for Uncle Lou and the TTUN fans and Steve Dace.
Yes.
High time.
Did you hear that I just referenced you, David?
I did. You could, nice troll job by Uncle Lou. You know what he was trying to do there, by the way. I mean, seriously.
Well, sure.
I mean,
I did my very best. I couldn't do it in true Uncle Lou style because, he's irreplaceable. He's the guy, and I certainly cannot one-up him in any such way. But if you heard my response, I was just letting him know that I find it, I just am flabbergasted. I cannot in any way fathom how they can fit all those national championship banners in Sanford Stadium in Athens. I don't know where they have the room.
Yes, they must. It's kind of like the team up north putting all those leather helmet, natties up there in their stadium. Before that we even had automobiles out there. So they celebrate those left and right.
David, Ohio State should be asking Michigan right now. They should contact Michigan and let them know, how does that work with the banner for the Co-Eastern Division Championship? Now, how does that work? Should we be raising a banner for our Co-Division Championship? No, Ohio State's way above that.
I like to think so, but the TTUN fans have not been there since the Clinton administration, so obviously they're having fun. It's high times right now. Did you tape your conversation with your bro man Steve Dace? By the way, did you guys?
We did this afternoon. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm sure he got a kick out of that. I mean, this is the happiest time of his life, so he's got to have it. So I'm sure he was quite gleeful, especially being in an Iowa movie theater this weekend. That's good stuff there. But I did want to pose a question. I got to throw this out there with the coaching situation and coaching carousel. And I don't know if you put this out there to your Notre Dame guys or you consider this. So what's the situation if Cincinnati makes the playoffs and Luke Fickell takes the Notre Dame job and then Marcus Freeman takes the Cincinnati job?
I don't know
and
if I
both
came
teams
up,
make the playoffs.
yeah, I don't know if I came up with that exact scenario, but I must have, because I did say something, because we were talking about, has it come to this where coaches would take another job and miss a college football playoff? And then I kind of processed it the same way that you just did. And I said, wouldn't it be something else if would Luke Fickell coach his current team against Marcus Freeman and his current team, or would they just switch sidelines and coach their new teams? How would that happen?
Yeah, I was listening to some of I caught the tail end of your conversation last night after the Kelly news hit. By the way, on a scale of 1 to 10, were you shocked at like a level 10 on that,
Yes.
Mark, or
Yeah.
or does just nothing surprise you anymore?
Well, I know I say that from time to time, and most of that has to do with the actual results on the field. But yeah, Brian Kelly just doesn't seem like a fit for LSU from a culture standpoint. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely looks like a Notre Dame guy. I mean, he's a Boston Irish Catholic coaching at Notre Dame. I mean, come on. I mean, that's like, if that doesn't fit, I don't know what does fit. So, and then he's going to go to LSU. I mean, I think the LSU job is still one of the top 5 to 10 jobs in America. Do you have it that high? I don't know what you would put it on your scale, Mark.
I'll go between 5 and 10. I'll go between 5 and 10.
That's about right. I think with the recruiting base being as strong as it has, I mean, the last 3 coaches that have been at LSU have won a national title. So, but I think the key with Kelly is, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Orgeron caught lightning in a bottle with Burrow. If you push his record out in 2019, it's a very average to below average record for an LSU coach. And I think that unless Kelly can come in, bring in the right staff, now he should be able to recruit in the top 5 or 6, but that's per normal in the SEC. And his path is obviously that much tougher in the SEC. So I really wondered about this move by him. I mean, did your Notre Dame people get that? I didn't get to hear their commentary on it.
So we had a discussion, the one that you're referencing live last night, and then we taped another one today after a little bit more came out. We taped another one today, and the one Notre Dame guy that we have on, Nathan Erbach, who anchors our postgame Notre Dame coverage, he doesn't take any offense to it. He sees the benefits of going to LSU. He sees it more as a even job swap. He sees certain aspects of Notre Dame that would be probably in higher status, but he also sees, again, the benefits to LSU. So he wasn't necessarily offended by it. The other guy, James Rowe, very much sees it from a historical standpoint, that how in the world do you leave Notre Dame to go to LSU?
Well, I mean, I think with Kelly, to be perfectly honest, Mark, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, I think he plateaued at Notre Dame. I think he basically looked at it and says, this is about as far as I can get this program. I mean, maybe that's an unfair statement, but I mean, he's gotten to the playoff a couple times. He's got them to the national championship game, but we've talked about it before. I have just never seen Notre Dame And maybe it's just because he hasn't had the right coaches or found the right quarterback, but he's just never developed that offense that I think, you need to win a national championship. Although this year, as we talked about, this year might be the exception year, and maybe he just feels he's more likely to build that at LSU. I don't know.
Well, I would tend to agree with what you're saying, except for he seems to be peaking at the end of his Notre Dame tenure. I know that it's a very slow incline. It's not like he's just shot up and all of a sudden he's gone from 10-3 seasons to on the cusp of a national championship. But if anything, they've had their better seasons near the end of his tenure here. And then you look at his recruiting class that is about to be signed. Well, it may fall apart at this point, but he's currently got the number 4 recruiting class in the country to be signed 2 weeks from now.
Yep.
You would think, if anything, okay, had he, let's say, had a few near misses 5 years ago, and since then it's been a lot of 10-3s and 11-2s where he's still good, but they're really not that close, then he would be making the decision you're talking about based on the reasons you're talking about. I think it may be, I think we've got to consider, we've all of a certain age have worked jobs for a number of years. And at some point you get stale in that job, possibly depending on your demeanor and depending on how much you like that line of work and how much you're progressing in that company. But you get a bit stale, but ratchet that up to running a college football program where you're living that, breathing that constantly. And it may just be exactly what he somewhat likened it to be. And that's just, I need a change. I need something different, or not necessarily that we heard from him. Yeah, that's right. This was from the athletic director, Jack Swarbrick, who basically said, he's just, I could tell even before it transpired that he was getting a bit stale. There were things that he let go. There were certain things that he let on in conversation that let me know that after 12 years, it was just, he needed something different.
I think so. I mean, sometimes you're at a place for so long, and maybe that's why I was saying, and that's also why I kind of used the term peaked. And maybe I could have also used the term that maybe it's just time for a change. And, maybe also when you get $100 million over the course of 7 years,
that helps.
It makes it a little bit easier to change it, I guess. So, I didn't want to, before I let you go, I got to get to my salmon dinner too, Mark. So you're not the only one that's hungry here. But I wanted to get to the Lincoln Riley hire at USC. I think that could be a home run. I don't know what your read is on it, but I think that's a guy that's going to be able to get there and get off the ground and running, especially with that base out there with that type of conference and his chief competition being Washington and Oregon. I heard Colin Cowherd talk about it. I think he's going to be able to get quarterbacks, skill players out there. I think in a matter of 2 or 3 years, I think he's got USC in the playoff. What's your read?
Well, I think he's got all the advantages lined up for him. Sure. The conference, the recruiting, the name brand that he brings, in addition to and married now with the name brand of the school.
I just think that, the big thing is, like Oklahoma, he better find a defensive coordinator, which, he never really, although I guess I heard he brought Alex Grinch over from Oklahoma. Did you hear that too?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll see how that goes. By the way, any word on who takes that Oklahoma job? I heard Venables is the rumor. What are your Oklahoma people telling you?
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Okay. That ought to be interesting. He knows the landscape. He's been there before. Hey, you going to do Buckeye Talk tomorrow?
We sure will. 1:30 Eastern.
Okay. I need my therapy, Mark. I'm still wearing black, still in mourning here. So, all right, Mr. Rogers, you enjoy your dinner, Mark.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. You too. All right, folks. There you have it. Thank you so much, everyone, for contributing, whether that be smash the like button, contribute right here through the Super Chat. Thank you so much for everyone that did. I believe we got to all of them. And certainly, if you would like to bypass, I'll get to this last one, actually, that's coming in from Feet and a million numbers after that. Nick Saban did not seem like fit for LSU either. Fair point. I could expound upon why he was a better fit at that point, or appeared to be, coming from Michigan State and a West Virginia native in comparison to Brian Kelly, but I get your point. All right, everyone, welcome. And we appreciate you being here. And at a certain point, after I've talked for about 14 hours consecutively, I understand that that's about all I've got in me. So thank you for being here. We've got live shows galore tomorrow. 12:30 Eastern, Oklahoma Live, 1:30 Eastern, Ohio State Live, 5 p.m. Michigan, 6 Florida State, 7 Miami. We will see you starting at 12:30 Eastern with Oklahoma Live.